Hey girl, my name is Anel. Welcome to the Brave in Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hey girl, thank you for being here. In today's podcast, we have Krista. She is the host of She Calls Her Shots podcast, and I'm so excited to have her in this episode. She's going to talk to us about inner confidence and just manifesting your dreams and goals. Hi, Krista. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you and, for you to share your knowledge with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
To start, do you want to give us a little introduction about yourself?
Who's Krista? Sure. Yeah. So Krista. So I originally lived in Florida. I grew up in Florida and I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area about 7 years ago. I kind of moved back and forth. So it's funny because I feel like every time I was like growing my business, I was like growing in a new market. And then it wasn't until I started really growing my business online, I was like, oh, good. Now I can live wherever. But yeah, so I started off, I got my bachelor's degree in human resources, which I know we'll kind of dig into that a little bit later. Thought that I was going to be in recruiting, was in recruiting for a while, but for over the last 10 years had been side by side growing my photography business. So I've really been focusing on that for the last 10 years, but in the last year, I have shifted to really focusing more on helping other women, entrepreneurs start their business, launch their business. I just found my passion there. I live here in California with my boyfriend and my 2 dogs. I can't complain because I moved from Florida where it was hot all the time. And now I live here in California where the weather is just great. The sun's shining, it hardly rains. It's wonderful. But that's a little bit about me.
So you said you come from like the tech industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
What made you go into podcasting and helping other women launch their business?
Yeah. So I guess kind of going way back. So when I was in college, like I mentioned, I got my degree in human resource management. I was the first one in my immediate family to get like a traditional like 4-year bachelor's degree. So I kind of felt like there was I put a lot of pressure on myself to like make sure that I did something with it. And so I followed that passion for a while. It kind of led me to a few different places, ended up bringing me into the tech industry in California, starting as a recruiting coordinator. And from there kind of, worked up, moved into a different company, kind of worked my way up into a recruiter in the tech field. And coming from Florida, I felt very grateful for having a job in tech. I mean, for anyone who is familiar with it, I didn't work for like a Facebook or a Google, but it was still a great company with great benefits and great people and, all of these things. So I felt very grateful for that. But like I had mentioned, over the last 10 years, I've also been growing my photography business. And so I had always felt this pull to eventually leave my full-time job and just focus on photography. I always thought that was going to be the one thing that I did was I was going to be a wedding photographer. And so I kind of felt this struggle for a while because in my head, I'm like, I have this great job and do I really want to leave that? Like to pursue this thing? It feels really scary. But I think like most women entrepreneurs, I mean, you kind of get to that point where when you're doing basically 2 full-time jobs, you realize that you can't do both anymore. Like one thing is going to end up dropping and I don't want it to be either of these things. So just kind of reached that point where I realized that I wanted to spend my time really building my own business. And for a while, I thought that was going to be photography related. I left my full-time job, I think in 2019. I think the years all blend together now, but I think it was about 2 years ago. And for the first like 6 months to a year, I really thought that I was going to be doing something photography related, whether it's education, teaching other women how to, grow their photography business. And then over the last year, I felt this misalignment there, but I wasn't sure what it was that I wanted to be doing. And I really do think, I know you mentioned, like, I talk a lot about manifestation. I talk I believe a lot in listening to your intuition, because in my head, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I was supposed to go, but I kept having these people enter my life, or like these things happen. And I kind of really just started to get in tune with the things that I was paying attention to and the things that just sparked joy in me. And that's when I started to come across, I know we both know Keisha. And so I came across her, and I came across her podcasting course. And it's funny because if you had told me 2 months prior to me doing this podcasting course that I was going to create a podcast, I would have laughed at you, because I am someone who does not like sharing their story. It makes me really uncomfortable. Like, I don't like being the center of attention. I don't like any of that. And so podcasting sounded like the opposite of what I wanted to do. But I just started realizing, as I was like, you know what, but I want to help women. And if this is going to help me further that journey and that vision of helping other women succeed in their business, like, it just felt right. So it's been kind of a transition over the last like year and a half, 2 years, just, going from thinking that I was going to be doing one thing and then kind of transitioning into now focusing more on growing my podcast, coaching other women entrepreneurs, and all of that. So a very long answer, but that's how kind of I went from, my tech job into like really just going to pursue what it is that I felt called to do at the time, and then being along for the ride and transitioning as it's kind of happened.
Isn't it funny how that happens, where, you think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then, I don't know, like a month from now, 2 months, a year from now, you're doing something totally different, but it makes you happy.
Yes. And I think that that's so important for us to be okay with as small business owners, because I think a lot of us crave that structure and that familiarity, and we want to do the thing that feels comfortable. But I think as our seasons of life change, like our direction and our things that we want to do change. And sometimes that is so terrifying, and it's so hard to sometimes be open to that. But yeah, like, you could be doing something completely different 2 years from now.
Yeah. And I think also too, it's important that you follow, like how you said, your intuition and your just your gut feeling, because you can, like you said, you can get stuck just doing, the things that you think are normal for that business. Like, for example, your photography, and you could have gotten just stuck of just doing the traditional stuff and seeing other photographers. What are they doing? I should be doing that, instead of listening to, okay, I have this feeling of doing something else, not necessarily in photography, because even though you thought that photography was your thing and was going to be your main thing, you listen to what your gut was telling you. It was going a different direction.
And I spent quite a few months following what I felt like I should be doing. And that was where a lot of the misalignment and the frustration and the internal just like not knowing what I was doing came from. And it wasn't until I took that step back and let it go. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to be open to other things. But I spent a very long time being stuck in that cycle of the shoulds and what I should be doing and what other people are doing. And it's so easy, I think, for us to get caught into that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. So tell me about your podcast. What was the inspiration behind it, and who is your podcast for?
Yeah. So my podcast is for, essentially it's for any women entrepreneur, any woman who has a desire to kind of do more or dream bigger or push past their fears and really just play a bigger game, is kind of the way I talk about it. And my original reason for creating it was because I just wanted to talk about the things that you don't find as normally talked about. So for example, as a woman entrepreneur, you might be able to relate to this. We spend a lot of time buying courses or, buying like personal development books or things that kind of talk about the same messages, but I wanted to talk about the things that aren't necessarily talked about, the struggles behind it, the mindset behind it, like how success is not, linear. And we all know this, but I don't think that we spend enough time talking about it because of fear and guilt and shame. We think we need to be further along than we are. We're afraid of what people might think. And so I wanted my podcast to be a space where we talk about the realness behind growing a business. So that way, for new business owners, when you find yourself falling flat on your face, knowing that like, oh, I'm not the only one. And there are people that are further along than where I am that are also experiencing a lot of the same things. And working past a lot of the imposter syndrome and perfectionism and self-doubt, and also some things to like help grow a business as I come across them here and there. But I really just wanted it to be a space where we talked about like the real aspects behind growing a business and how a lot of it is often messy.
Yeah, I love that, because what you normally see is, you know, someone who has a successful business and they're trying to sell you on, how they did it, but it, however they did it, not necessarily is going to work for you.
Definitely.
And
we spend a lot of time investing money and time into other people's formula strategy.
And I think, also learning from other people's mistakes it's a big win. It's money that you can save too.
Yes.
Right? And so what is your message for your podcast?
Yeah, I would say my overall message is to help empower and inspire other women in both their, creating their own business, but also just really taking ownership and finding joy in their life. So even if you're like at the very beginning stages and you're like, I don't even have a business yet. One of the things that I truly believe is that we need to find acceptance and joy and happiness right where we are, no matter what our goals are, no matter how big they are, no matter how scary they are. We really have to find happiness where we are right now. So that's one of the things I try and focus on, is that really having that self-acceptance and self-love, and being able to find joy in our journey right now. So that way, because the way that I look at it, and you might have heard this said before, but like, if you can't be happy with what you have now, even once you get and you like where you want to go, you still won't be happy then, because we're so used to just constantly chasing that next thing. And that's going to be the thing that we find joy. And I think so often when building a business, that comes up a lot, because we have big goals, we have big dreams, we're always moving on to the next thing. But it's really focusing on living the life that we want and being happy now, and not constantly chasing after that next thing in order to find happiness.
Right. And it's kind of hard, because as an entrepreneur, or a small business owner, you want more, right? Which is normal, because that's what it took. That's what took you, out of like the 9 to 5, and, made you start your 9 to 5. Sorry, not your 9 to 5. It made you start your small business.
Yeah.
But how do you distinguish between, yes, I want more, but also being satisfied with what you have now?
Yeah.
And the stages you're going through now.
And that's the thing, is it's such a balance, and it's not a perfect balance. It's a very mindful practice that I think takes a lot of practice to do it. And I want to clarify, when I say practice, I don't mean that in the sense that you will ever be perfect at it. Like it's a life practice that you will continue to do. You'll continue to fumble at sometimes. I do the exact same thing. I actually just had a meeting this morning with my accountability partner, who I love. We meet once a week. And just like 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how important it was to like write down your affirmations and your goals and your positive mindset and all of these things. And then I wasn't doing it this week, and I felt off, and I wondered why. And I was like, I literally wasn't doing the things that I always talk about doing. So I think it's about like knowing that it's not always going to be perfect. But for me, what I find is that, because I'm also, very driven, like you said, that's the reason why we start businesses, is because we have big dreams and big goals. So I'm constantly trying to allow myself the space to journal out and write out what my goals are, but then also getting really tangible about, it's not so much that I want to make this amount of money, or I want to experience this, type of goal or win. It's like taking it one step further and figuring out, what is it about this that will change my lifestyle? Like, because there's always a deeper reason. It's not really money. It's, what is that money going to bring into your life? What will you be able to do? And then figuring out how you can do some of those things now. So that way you're still excited about the dream and you're excited about the goal, but you can start kind of implementing some of those long-term lifestyle changes. Just slowly start implementing them now, so that you can enjoy the journey and be happy where you are.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So in your coaching, you also have coaching one-on-one, and you have also a membership. You teach, I guess, how to find like confidence and inner confidence, and how to push, past doubts. Because let's say I want to start a business, but I'm doubting myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you help other women, just push past through that and have them have that confidence that yes, they can do it?
Yeah. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because I spent so long in my business as a business owner searching for that confidence and those beliefs. And I kept searching for them in books or other people's success formula or something that was like outside of myself. I kept thinking that I needed more. I needed to consume and learn and be more. And one of my favorite things to do with my clients when I'm coaching is to help bring that out. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything new that you've never heard, but my favorite thing is helping women find that in themselves and finding that confidence that they already have, that they just haven't really let out yet. And a lot of that starts with a lot of self acceptance, a lot of self love, a lot of just the mindset shifts that we need to take, again, like the way that the perspective and the way that we're looking at our lives. And that's what I try and focus on. Because for me, coaching is not so much me. I want this to be a practice where eventually you get to the point where you have already built up all of the tools that you needed to be able to hit those goals. I don't want you to think that you have to rely on me as a coach to constantly be that person who's going to tell you how to do something and how to do something well. I want to give you the tools that you can learn the practices and the ways of being able to do those things on your own. I will still always, of course, be a resource, but I want to empower and inspire women to find those things in themselves because they're there. It's just sometimes takes a little bit to get them out.
Yeah. And how you said earlier too, usually you've already, spent all this money on courses and things like that. But what's missing still is that confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I truly believe that if you can implement the best marketing strategy in the world, but if you don't believe it's going to work for you, it's not going to work. And it's not just because simply your mindset, there's a lot more to it than that. But if you're in a headspace where you don't believe it's going to work, you're not letting that creativity flow. You're not trying to think of ways where you can tweak it and make it yours and implement new things because you're so concerned about following it step by step exactly the way they did it. And then when it doesn't work, you think, oh, there's something wrong with me. And it's like, no, like you just have to tweak it and adapt it and have it work for you. And also just give ourselves time. I think sometimes, especially now, it's so easy to see people's overnight success or what looks like an overnight success. And so we put this pressure on ourselves to implement something and see immediate results. And sometimes it's like, no, you're on the right track. You just have to give it a little bit of time and you have to trust the process.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And that's key because all we see on social media is like these successes, but what took them to get to that place, right? And usually it's a lot of work, a lot of, time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, definitely.
Like some people have been in business for years and they're finally seeing, fruits of their labor.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it that's hard is that a lot of it takes inner work, which you don't see. And so that's, I think, the part that people don't think that that's what they need because that's not what they see on social media. You don't see someone posting a lot about like the inner growth or the conversations that they're having with themselves or like all of the inner things that they're doing. You just see the launches, the marketing things. And so you think, oh, that must be it. That's what's leading to their success. But really what you don't see is a lot of the inner work that is probably happening behind the scenes that's also helping to help spur some of that success as well.
Yeah. And you also don't see a lot of the behind the scenes, like if they outsource or, if, they have other people or employees helping them or family members and things like that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give women who are listening and want to start, a small business?
Yeah, I would say number one, let yourself dream really big and follow your intuition. If you have an idea, if something sparks that creativity, if you feel it, every couple of days or every few hours, you just feel that that's the thing that you want to do, no matter how crazy it sounds, no matter how scary it sounds, follow it. my other advice would be, try to figure out how to say this nicely, but like, don't necessarily share it with everybody in the beginning. And I
Yeah.
say that because sometimes, as much as people might love us and care for us, they, they also might be a little concerned. All the concerns that you hear, is that going to make you any money? Is that going to, and oftentimes that ends up squashing so many dreams before we even let ourselves explore the idea. So kind of let it sit inside you and start working towards it and take those small steps to kind of inch you closer to doing the thing that it is that you feel called to. And my third thing that's kind of in line with that is, one, focus on small steps. Don't feel like you need to accomplish everything overnight. And yeah, just let yourself, give yourself that space and that creativity to every day just take that small step to get you a little bit closer. Because really action is going to be the thing that brings you clarity. We could spend the rest of our lives trying to plan the perfect business, but until you take that first messy step, that step that feels really uncomfortable, the step that may not even go well and you may fall on your face, like until you do those things and let yourself just keep showing up, those are going to be how you know, is this what I'm meant to be doing? Does this feel right? All of that. So I know that's kind of more than one thing, but just like when you're first starting out, I think those things are so important.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And your number 2 tip, I don't know why, I just keep hearing it and hearing it. Like a lot of people are saying the same exact thing. Like if you have something, like don't share everything. Just keep something to yourself or keep it to yourself and just work towards that. And then eventually, tell people. Because a lot of negativity can just, hurt you, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it comes from a very loving place. I mean, I know even when I was leaving when I was leaving my full-time job in tech, I mean, I love my family dearly, but all of them looked at me like, why? Like, what are you doing? Because people may not always see what it is that you see. And I mean, they're not living your life, right? You always hear it like other people's opinions don't pay my bills. And I think that's true, but sometimes it comes from a space that is really loving. Someone might really genuinely care about you and they won't necessarily understand that the advice that they're giving out of love and trying to be helpful sometimes just completely squashes that dream for us. And then we end up not pursuing it at all.
Yeah.
So,
or, like in your example, where you left the, safety net, that safety job where it had good benefits and, good pay or whatever it might be, like it's a safety net, to going to somewhere where it was kind of like uncertain and now you have to do all the work by yourself and you don't have a team yet, or at least most of us who start a business don't have a team in the beginning, so we have to do everything ourselves. So and if your family could be like, well, why, that just doesn't sound right, like what's wrong with you, like why are you leaving a safe job to go to something uncertain, especially during this time where there's a pandemic and there's a lot of uncertainty. But yeah, I think I just want to add like a tip. Like for me, it's just do it scared.
Yes, 100%.
If you have that on your heart and it's it's a dream of yours and you really want to do it, just do it scared.
Yeah. And one thing that helped me a lot, because I was the same way when I was launching my podcast, because it felt very vulnerable, because it's just me talking at a mic for 30 minutes and like releasing it for everyone to hear. But one of the things that helped me a lot was remembering that like the reason behind why, and everyone talks about having a strong why, but when you can go into it feeling scared, but thinking about the person, like literally thinking about them, picturing them, listening to you and having their day, their week, their situation change and be better because they were able, you were able to impact them in that way. I don't care how scared you are, like you are going to feel also so excited that you are going to impact that person. Like that was such a big thing for me.
Yeah, I feel it the exact same way. I mean, even like I launched my podcast, August of last year. It's been 8 months or something like that. I still feel scared every single time that I record a podcast. So it will get better, I'm pretty sure, with time. But in the beginning, it's just scary. The entire time is scary. And, you wonder if you're doing the right decision or the wrong, or, but you just learn. So nobody goes into a business knowing everything. No. You just go and, go in and just learn.
Yeah. And honestly, the fear, I don't think ever goes away, because as we're up leveling in our business, we're always kind of reaching new levels. And so with each new level comes new fears. And so it's like really learning to embrace that this is never going to go away, and just being comfortable with the fact that it's always going to be here, and kind of going alongside of it as you continue to grow.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true, because right now it might be like lower risk decisions. And then as you get, more successful, your business gets more successful, then it's higher risk, decisions. And, the higher your company is, the more people you have under you and the more pressure it is. So you're right. That the feeling of being scared never goes away.
No. And I never want that to deter someone, because sometimes I know that sounds scary. Like, I'm always going to be afraid. No, I think that it's like in the beginning though, when you can push past those fears and you start to overcome that, it's so much easier. You just kind of accept that it's always going to be there. But because you've already practiced those skills starting out, you can always kind of have them as you grow.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I'm not saying, scared and like, oh, don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm saying scared is like, don't use that as an excuse to hold you back.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for being here and sharing, all this knowledge with us. And, I had a really great chat with you. I asked this of all my guests, and what is your favorite quote, Bible verse, song, or word that when, that time where you're just not feeling like yourself, or you're feeling down or feeling defeated, because that could happen very easily, when you're a small business owner. What is it that keeps you going? Like, what is your inspiration?
Yeah, I would say my favorite quote that I always find myself coming back to, you've probably heard it. It's from Henry Ford, and it's, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And sometimes, even if I'm in a space where, I'm not feeling great, if things don't feel like they're working well, it's that small reminder that I have that I am the only one responsible for my thoughts. No matter what happens to me, no matter what external circumstances, I will always be in control of my thoughts and how I think about myself. And so it's that gentle reminder of just remembering to believe that whatever it is that you want to do is absolutely possible. And sometimes if you're in a place where you don't feel like you can right now, sometimes you need the space to kind of get back into that. But it's just that reminder that you are the one in control of your own thoughts, and you have that choice of how you think about yourself. So that's probably the one I always find myself coming back to.
Yeah. And it's so true. Like, you're responsible, and what you think of yourself is what you're going to, manifest, right? What you're going to attract. Yeah. Yep. I love it. I love that. Mm-hmm. So lastly, how can we find you? How can we find your podcast? How can we find are you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter? How can we find you?
Yeah. So I guess just to start off, so my website is shecallshershots.com, and my podcast is also She Calls Her Shots. So those are both the same. And I am on Instagram. You can find me at Hey Krista Marie. And those are probably the places I live the most. I do have the podcast, which I'm obviously on every week. And then Instagram, I'm on every day. So I'd love to connect with anyone.
And all of her information would be in the show notes. So go give her a follow and go check out her podcast. Thank you so much, Krista.
Yes, this is such a pleasure. I'm so happy I could be here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBraveInHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.